Greetings, fellow Slayers and newcomers alike. Today we're exploring 3 disturbing details in Baldur's Gate 3. Spoiler warning, of course. Baldur's Gate 3 is a huge game, and there is a ton of stuff that could go on this list, so if you enjoy it and want more disturbing details, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know down in the comments. This video is kind of a test, and if it does well and you all do want more, I will be more than happy to oblige. Baldur's Gate 3 can be joyful and comedic at times, but the reality of the world you're facing is not one of butterflies and rainbows. It is one where you will face the harsh truths of reality and experience the brutality and darkness its world has to offer. You yourself may yet fend off this darkness in our reality with NordVPN's superior security. Give yourself the peace of mind and let NordVPN protect you from cyber demons with top-tier encryption, a strict no-logs policy, and access to content across the world. It's like having your own divine shield on the internet. Click my link below to get a special deal while supporting the channel. Thank you, NordVPN. As always, I want to thank my supporters. This channel would not be possible without you. You all are absolute legends, and it means the world to me. If you want to further support via Patreon, channel membership, or donations, links are below and more info on this at the end of the video. I'm your host, the ultimate goblin-slaying, evil-hating paladin. Welcome to Purge Evil. Thank you for stopping by. Let's get into it. Tadpoles and Ceremorphosis. To kick off the video, we start with the core problem the main characters face, and probably the most well-known scene of the game, aside from the bear scene of course, with the tadpole implantation and further Ceremorphosis. We get to see from the perspective of Bazel and get a nice up-close and personal shot of this disgusting little worm. About 3 inches in length and full of teeth and slime, it easily burrows into Lae'zel's skull, attaching itself to her brainstem, as with the rest of the Origin characters aboard the Nautiloid. This process is complete within just 3 minutes. Aside from the Dream Visitor's influence, which is a topic for another video, this would begin the process of Ceremorphosis. This is a 7-day transformation that will end with the victim becoming an Illithid, or in other words, Squidman. This process typically takes place in special birthing pods similar to the ones we see on the Nautiloid. The victim first begins to experience consistent headaches, along with dizziness, sweating, and general disorientation. This continues throughout the entire process, with the physical pain of it all worsening throughout. The victim will then begin to hallucinate, followed shortly after by the first physiological changes mainly occurring internally. A deep pain in the stomach, accompanied with a dark-colored vomit, signifies the transformation of the digestive tract. The gums in the victim's mouth will begin to soften, causing their teeth to loosen and fall out. By this time, the tadpole has grown and integrated itself with the host to a considerable degree, extending its tendrils down through the face of the victim and causing the jaw to become completely dislocated. The skull itself will then soften as the tadpole's brain mass continues to swell. This is quickly followed by hair loss and then the addition of a mucus-like substance forming on the skin. The victim's body will be devastated by this point, reaching an unrecognizable form as fully formed tentacles erupt from the mouth of the victim. The transformation, in essence, is complete. However, it will now take 21 years for the newborn Mind Flayer to reach its full maturity. You can watch an abridged version of this process if you become unprotected by the artifact for some reason like killing the Emperor.
Your stomach drops, your chest constricts. Your thoughts begin to splinter.
You are found. Now you hear me. Now you yield!
Real quick, if you're still watching, please make sure to like, please make sure to subscribe. It puts these videos into the algorithm and it keeps the channel alive. Sincerely, thank you. Now back to the video. Karlach's beheaded body. One of the most disturbing details I've found so far is Karlach's beheaded body. Okay, it's already disturbing you can cut her head off in the first place, but it goes even further than that. If you look at the body itself, or the neck specifically, it is surprisingly very well textured, and done so in a way to mimic the neck of an actual decapitation victim, what the flesh and muscle tissue might look like in such a situation, albeit a bit less mangled. What makes this particularly interesting to me is the fact that most players would never see the body up close, simply just due to the default camera, and for Larian Studios to have gone into so much detail is quite disturbing. From the jagged edges of flesh to the exposed vertebrae, the effort they put into this model is at almost a forensic level of attention, like they looked at real pictures just to craft this. You can also remove Nier's head later in the game and the neck will look similar, but it just doesn't hit the same considering who the two characters are in the first place, but that's besides the point though. There is tons of gore and horror throughout the game, but this moment is particularly brutal. There's a sort of psychological horror behind it. First, the fact she has an infernal engine instead of a heart, which you can still see glowing after she's died, so her body probably isn't fully dead yet, and likely would still be twitching and trying to function due to the hellish energy in the engine, though the glow does seem to disappear once you've removed the head. But the truly brutal part of this situation is just knowing her entire character arc is based around her escaping her fate, escaping slavery, fighting against a death sentence she never asked for, and ultimately being able to finally make her own decisions with her life, if at least for a time. She's already been through hell, both literally and figuratively, yet some decisions we make during the game can lead to her suffering a gruesome, tragic, or just undignified death. The sight of Karlach's headless body isn't just gory, it's wrong, in a way that makes us feel unsettled and just kinda gross inside. Again, the level of detail is disturbing all things considered, but it just makes Larian Studios more impressive in my eyes, and for Baldur's Gate 3, these extra details all add up to the sum of the immersion. Dwarf meat. If you've played Baldur's Gate 3 at least a little bit into Act 1, you may have ventured to the Goblin Temple a time or two. These are disgusting and vile creatures to begin with, raiding and pillaging whenever possible, and this is on full display when you enter the temple. The goblins do not only just kill, they capture, torture, and have a particular penchant for cannibalism and depravity. You can find the belly, ribs, and 2 chunks of a dwarf's legs roasting over the goblin's campfire. This is already disturbing in its own right, especially if you play as a dwarf, but on top of this, we can actually learn who these body parts belong to. This dwarf had a name, a backstory, and a role in this world before becoming nothing more than a grotesque meal. You see, if Eridan survives the initial goblin raid at the Grove, you can speak to him after to learn the details of his recently failed expedition to find the Night Song. Even with Halsin himself accompanying them for his own reasons, the group was attacked by goblins, which left most of the mercenaries dead, and for the rest, well, they suffered a fate much worse. We learn that one of these unfortunate souls was a dwarf by the name of Brian. Brian is that same dwarf we find roasting in pieces at the Goblin Temple, his legs, ribs, and belly being prepared as food for the goblins. Not only did they cut him into pieces and cook him, but one of the goblins took his belongings as its own and is actually wearing his blue pants. And from this goblin, we can obtain one of Brian's poems, which gives us a hint of his personality and who he could have been, a poet or a writer. But it also doubles as a map to find the Night Song.
Enjoying the view. Looking tasty in these new breeches, ain't I? Ah, you're just jealous because you wished you looked this good. Maybe they're a bit loose. But that's because I keep myself in shape. Not like that chunky dwarf I nicked them off.
That's him, on the spit. Plenty of him to go around once he's cooked.
Don't take it personal. If my mate Gricker was dead and I was hungry, I'd eat him, but he'd taste real good too. It's good meat if you can get it. Better than bloody chicken, anyhow. Shame he was as poor as a chicken. Nothing in his pants except a couple of coins and some lousy poem.
If you hadn't spoken to Eridan first, you might not even realize those chunks of meat were once a living person with dreams and ambitions rather than just some random background NPC. What's more, when entering the Blighted Village and triggering dialogue with the ambushing goblins, if you're playing as a dwarf, the goblin will make a remark about one of your fellow dwarves roasting back at the camp.
Get over there! Surround him like! What? You think we was just gonna let you slip by? You know, I hear we got one like you roasting back at camp. Don't seem fair for the lads to miss out. Bet we'd get some nice cuts out of you.
Absolutely disgusting. The fact they laugh about things like this is evidence of why I strongly dislike goblins, and proof of them not just being monsters by nature, but being monsters through their own conscious decisions. They love this. Interestingly enough, this is the only dwarf meat you can find throughout the entire game, and the Dark Urge can even consume the body parts to regain a nice chunk of health. This nasty little mechanic ties into the Dark Urge's backstory, but it's also just unsettling due to how casual the game allows it to be. The fact that Brian was once a person living their life and trying to achieve their goals, only to end up as a goblin's dinner, and then possibly yours, cements the grim reality of Baldur's Gate 3 and Faerun as a whole. This detail also reinforces the idea that the Dark Urge themselves is a monster, not too unlike the goblins, who is barely holding back their primal impulses. The ability to consume flesh and regain health isn't just an edgy mechanic, it's a storytelling element, and a moment where you're somewhat forced to reconcile with your character's true nature. This is another layer that adds to the whole, will you resist the urge or give in to your gory and vile instincts? The more I think about this game, the more I realize it's basically just one big psychological horror movie. But that's going to be all the time we have for this one, so if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like so it gets in the algorithm and more people can see it, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next one, and definitely let me know down in the comments if you want to see more disturbing details in Baldur's Gate 3, or I'm even open to suggestions for other games. I've always wanted to do this type of content as I've always found it super interesting and entertaining, so I would absolutely love to do more if you guys enjoy it. If you'd like to further support Purge Evil, you can do so by joining the Patreon, becoming a channel member, or by simply donating with the link found below. Patreon members gain the most benefits with access to written builds, guides, and more to come, while channel members will receive early access to videos as well as some other minor benefits. A big thank you to my supporters. It is with your help that I am able to make these videos and hopefully one day turn it into something more. Your support truly is a blessing that I do not take for granted. Thank you for stopping by. And until next time, Purge Evil.
Yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah, crown in my palm, but I ain't put it on. Yeah.